Hey guys, well, Happy New Year. This is not exactly how I wanted to start off the new year in terms of video production, but here we are. So I just kind of wanted to address some of what happened today in the wake of the Trump rally, at the Trump rally, however you want to phrase it. And I just wanted to talk about it real quick. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go look up Trump rally, Capitol building. You'll figure it out pretty quickly. So I just want to make a few quick points. So first of all, Trump incited this. It's very obvious. It was right before his supporters stormed the Capitol building. He was giving a very inflammatory speech. Other people who were involved in the rally also gave inflammatory speeches. It was really clear that he was inciting this, basically. And it was especially clear because it took him so long to say, hey, stop doing this. And even when he did say it, it was very, very weak. Which is very funny for someone who always talks about being, so strong and, stuff like that. It was absurd and obscene. The second big point that I want to make, and this is the main point, is that this is nothing like Black Lives Matter. Some people are saying, oh, well, Black Lives Matter was doing this over the summer, blah, blah, blah. First of all, if they were doing it and they were so bad, like you said, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Secondly, no, they weren't doing this. They really were not attacking Capitol buildings and things like that. There was the federal courthouse in Portland. However, that was much more of an Antifa thing. And even then it was kind of like vague in terms of who was actually doing it. It seemed to be much more disparate actors. Actually, the closest that we saw to this in 2020, ironically, or not ironically, was basically a bunch of Trump supporters, people who were protesting COVID lockdowns in Idaho and Michigan. They went and they stormed the Capitol buildings of those states with guns. And then they went and they did it again today in DC. So really, this is not surprising from that standpoint either. But no, that really didn't happen with Black Lives Matter. Another big difference is they were not responded to in the same way in terms of how officials responded, but also how law enforcement officers responded. Law enforcement responded much more gently to the Trump supporters' actions today with storming the literal Capitol building of the United States with guns and saying that they wanted to hang Mike Pence and things of that nature. They responded much more gently to them than they did to a lot of Black Lives Matter protests, even the peaceful ones. And that's been pretty well documented that, officers would attack Black Lives Matter protesters and things like that, basically unprovoked in a lot of cases, use tear gas a lot quicker, things of that nature. If what happened today had been a bunch of people of color, I promise you the police response would have been a lot swifter and a lot more firm. In terms of the response of elected officials, Trump's response was really weak. He basically gave these responses that weren't clear in terms of what he actually wanted. And even once he did say, hey, you need to go home, he really did it in such a way that he said, oh yeah, but still the election was stolen. It was silly. Whereas Biden said in no uncertain terms that this violence was unacceptable and things like that in the cases that it did occur for the protests over the summer. Also, the issue itself, totally different. Black Lives Matter was protesting systemic racial injustice throughout the centuries in the United States, and that still persists today. And there is plenty of evidence for that. And the most striking evidence that we saw, of course, was that horrendous video of the killing of George Floyd. The evidence for voter fraud on a scale that Trump and his allies are claiming, it just really doesn't exist. There is some evidence of minor voter fraud, but that happens in every election. Really, it's nothing like what they would need in order to really make a legitimate claim that it affected the election in any significant way. And that's spelled out by how abysmally Trump has done in the courts. He's gone something like 1 in 62 in court with these election lawsuits. It's embarrassing, honestly. So really the evidence is totally different. The issue is totally different. And I think that's important to keep in mind too. One other thing to note is that this is not over. There's still something like 14 days left in the Trump administration, technically speaking. I'm anxious to see what happens with those 14 days. I'm anxious to see what happens afterwards. And I think, frankly, this has demonstrated to us that Trump is not only a serious danger to national security and to the general welfare, but also that he just doesn't care. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to benefit himself. And that was clearly spelled out today. And even if any of these claims that he's making, these claims of massive voter fraud, were true. At this point, the way that he handled himself today demonstrates that he does not deserve to hold office for another day. Frankly, he should be removed from office. The cabinet should invoke the 25th Amendment and remove him and just let Pence serve out the rest of the term. Will that happen? Probably not. But that is what should happen because, frankly, what happened today was unacceptable. And it is definitely Trump's fault. You cannot deny that. It's so obvious. And he knew what he was doing. He knew it full well. He's received far too many warnings. So those are just my thoughts. I hope that you got something out of it. Anyway, you slice it. I hope that you have a very safe, happy, and healthy new year, and that we can come together as a country and unite and work towards building a more perfect union together in the months and years ahead. Thanks for watching.